But the improvisation that happens in Impro sketch, we'll often say to each other before we walk out on stage, hey, I want you to be a waiter. I've got this idea. When I do this, maybe react this way.
So it's almost like a live workshop.
Yeah.
It's like a live writer's room, but we're up actually improvising sketches. So then those improvised scenes, the next month of Impro sketch, the next show, you might see some of those scenes developed into the written sketches. So it's a constant evolution of sketch, basing the written sketches that you see are often formulated from original improvisations, which is cool because you create stuff that you wouldn't always create sitting at a desk in front of a computer.
I think when you're in that improvising mindset, the inner critic is switched right off. So, and you're there and you're trying to pick up and mine the comedy from absolutely everything that's been given to you. So, you know, it goes there because you're not sitting there going, oh, has that got any legs, you know, and all those filters are taken out, I think. And often you've got 2 or 3 minds working on the same comedic premise and idea rather than just one.
Yeah, and it's that meeting of the minds and the collaboration, which is the funnest part, is because you might create the start of a sketch, but then someone will take it somewhere else. So it's not completely driven by the one writer. But when you're improvising, it turns that assumption off because you're just free and present. You can go places where usually you wouldn't go to, which is really cool.
Yeah, and there's also the flip side of that too, where you take an idea that you've had sitting at your desk.
Yeah.
You go, I'll try that on, and it just fucking dies, just crashes into the ground. You're like, guys, you fucked it. That was a good idea. We have a week and a half writing deadline. Then we select sketches for a table read. We have a table read. Then we have
which is really important because sometimes you write a sketch and think it's hilarious, and then you put it at the table and get it read, and it's not actually it's funny to read, but it's not actually as funny when you hear it, and vice versa.
Yeah.
When you read it on paper, you're like, that's not funny, but then when you actually get actors and comedians to read it, all of a sudden there's just funny things that just seem to happen because you've brought it to life.
And then we have a week to redraft, and then we do an afternoon's rehearsal of the Sunday before the show, and then we do the show again, and the cycle repeats. So it's a monthly show. We'll say, we'll beat up the ending a little bit, and that will get rewritten in, or someone will go, leave it with me, and I'll try to get it across the line. Sometimes they're complete redrafts, like this is an interesting premise, but it's not quite getting over the line. Maybe we take it in a whole different direction. Maybe there's an underlying tone that's not complementing the comedy too well. So the idea is good, but the tone of the sketch isn't. So people will take that away and redraft it and then resubmit it for the next month.
And that's why the table read's so valuable, is because that's where we discover all of that. And also just the meeting of people at a table. It seems these days a lot of stuff is done via correspondence. You hear a lot of sketch shows where the writers aren't in the same room. They're all, sitting at their office a lot of the time at home, and they'll send stuff in and then they'll get feedback. But we're just finding it so great being able to be in the same room as a whole bunch of writers, that sort of old school style of writing. Yeah, it's just...
Sometimes they come like it's just rained and daisies are popping up everywhere.
Absolutely. It's like Christmas.
Yeah, and other times you're sitting there just watching a cursor flash going, deadline's in 2 hours. What's funny, But sometimes they come from an idea. Sometimes they come from, the simple 1 + 1. Sometimes they come from just finding a circle of expectation and breaking that a little bit. And not sort of overcomplicating things, keeping your ideas simple and the comedic premise simple. Because we want, our sketches on stage typically go anywhere from a minute to 3 minutes, which is probably a page and a half to 4 pages of sketch. And when I've been working in TV, we couldn't write longer than a page on some of the shows per sketch. So you have to really have the comic idea, tinker with it, and then refine it down so it's really clear and really reduced to the purest form of the idea. Just marshalling a monthly show is a huge time sink. Writing for it, performing in it, directing it, and then there's the long, hours of reading all the submitted sketches, choosing them. We have, 3-hour Skype meetings going, this one, don't know about that one. and then getting that happening monthly. And
Absolutely. If there's anyone out there thinking, I wish I was the head of a sketch writing show, it's not as glamorous as you think.
Yeah.
And I think that going back, like that's another thing, how to become a good sketch writer is just write a lot of sketches.
Yeah, and I get precious about them being rejected.
Yeah.
That was the thing I learned working on those shows a while back was, you submitted your sketches and they would accept 2 of 6 or 3, and you'd be like, well, but these other ones are gold. And
yeah, it's usually the ones that you didn't think would get chosen as well, because we become very precious about our own work. So it's usually the first couple of sketches we write we think are gold, but they're usually the ones that are probably going to be shit. And they were just the sketches that were sitting in your little brain out tray, and you've really got to get those out so then you can start writing more and more sketches. We're still learning, I think. I know that Saturday Night Live has a really strict way that they do their show. They open with a political current sketch, and then there's a musical number, and A, B, and C. And we're the same. I think it's good to start big. Like in stand-up, it's good to start with a big punch to get the audience laughing and just get the audience to trust in your comedy. I think that's comedy across the board. The audience wants to like you, but they're not going to like you straight away. They're not easy. They as soon as they trust in that this is going to be funny, then they're going to come on the journey with you. So you need to have that first sketch or second sketch that's going to say, hey, it's okay, relax.
Yeah.
This show is funny. And then you can start to, put a few little sort of question mark sketches. There's a few sketches sometimes that you just don't know are going to be funny for an audience until you put it in front of an audience.
And then there's also the question of the different styles of sketch comedy.
Absolutely.
Like there's very sort of traditional sketch comedy in an office, very naturalistic stuff. And then there's stuff that is more movement based or a little bit absurd or abstract, and so you've got to kind of lead an audience into that. You can kind of again put them on their heels by kind of shocking them with something that doesn't flow. So we've got to think about that as well, because we get all sorts from the writers of Impro sketch. We get completely surreal sketches as well as very naturalistic sketches. So we have to consider how those go in the flow of the show as well.
And there's structures as well. There's a fish out of water sort of sketch where there's, a certain environment like a shopping centre, and then Bane might walk in from The Dark Knight, for example, and that's your very fish out of water. It's this particular character in a situation they wouldn't usually be in, or there's the pullback and reveal, or particular structures of sketches. We make sure that we don't put a similar sort of style of sketch. Like there might be a very character based sketch, or a very situational. The situation is funny with very real characters in the situation. We try and make sure that there's variety. It's there's highs and lows, so you're going a bit like on a roller coaster, I guess. But
and sometimes you're rejecting people's sketches on the base that it's good, but we've already got one like that this month. That's a little bit more surprising, or a little bit more sort of catches us off guard with that fish out of water. So yes, your sketch is good. Maybe we'll put it in next month, but we've already got one of those that works this month. So
you're in a good place when you've got sketches where you're like, that's hilarious. Oh no, we're going to have to put it in next month's show.
Yeah.
Which is always great.